The National Institute for Communicable Diseases has reported 7,983 new COVID-19 cases in the country. This brings the total number of laboratory-confirmed cases since the pandemic began to 2,613,569. A further 299 COVID-19 related deaths sadly have been reported, bringing the total number of fatalities to date to 77,440. The province with the highest number of new coronavirus cases is now the Western Cape with 2,119, followed by KwaZulu-Natal with 1,949 and Gauteng, which now has 694 new cases. It's been 5 years since the late ANC struggle stalwart Winnie Madikizela-Mandela offered to take President Cyril Ramaphosa to Marikana. But the president is yet to fulfill this promise to the struggle stalwart to visit the Marikana widows. As the non-executive director of Lonmin back in 2012, President Ramaphosa sent out an email calling for concomitant action against illegally striking miners. What followed was the brutal killing of mine workers at a hill near Marikana.
34 striking miners were brutally gunned down by a democratic dispensation fighting for a better wage. Days leading to the massacre, 10 miners, including security guards and police officers, were also killed. Cyril Ramaphosa, who was Lonmin's non-executive director at the time, said he was trying to quell tensions, but unfortunately used inappropriate language.
My role was to try and stop further deaths from happening. Some of the workers had been hacked to death, and their eyes gouged out, their hearts ripped out, and that horrified me. And yes, I may well have used unfortunate language in the messages that I sent out, and for which I have apologized, and for which I do apologize.
Struggle stalwart Winnie Madikizela-Mandela back then offered to take the then ANC Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa to Marikana to meet the widows. That never materialized, as she has since passed on. Madikizela-Mandela had promised to fundraise for the widows.
We will help to look after your Marikana widows. When I get well, I'm going to lead a campaign for those orphans and widows. That I can assure you of. And you know who's going to support me? Deputy President. He's going to find a budget from the white capital that is here.
To date, President Cyril Ramaphosa has failed to honor his promise to Winnie Madikizela-Mandela. The Marikana widows are yet to meet face-to-face with President Ramaphosa.
You said you would take me and Julius Malema to Marikana to meet the widows of the departed miners. We could not go because you were not well. You are gone now. I am left to go alone. But I will be guided by your spirit. As you said, and I know that Julius Malema will go with me so that we can go and heal the wounds of the Marikana widows.
As a founding member of the National Union of Mine Workers, Ramaphosa was expected to always champion and protect mine workers' rights. But his role at the time as Lonmin non-executive director has opened him up for criticism, particularly from opposition parties and his detractors. And as the country once again remembers the event of 16 August 2012, it's unclear if President Ramaphosa will ever set foot in Marikana. Samkele Masego, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Since October 2012, Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza has been representing before the Marikana Commission of Inquiry 36 families of striking miners who were killed by the police at Marikana in August 2012. The Farlam Commission of Inquiry into the killings found the accusations without merit. To talk to us a little bit more about this, Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza joins us now for I suppose a reflection of that time and the period since. Thank you so much indeed for joining us and welcome to the program.
Thank you for inviting me, Peter. Pleased to be part of the program.
It's been so many years since that tragic day at Marikana, and more than anything, I think people have been expecting that the victims and the families would have had some kind of closure by now. Where are we with that?
Well, as you correctly said, I am representing the families of those who were killed. There were 37 of them. A claim of one who was represented elsewhere was settled, and that left 86 of those families of mine workers were killed. Before that fateful day, 3 of those people were killed, and then on the day, 34 were killed. So I've been representing the 36. The 2 were killed before the 16th, and then those who were then, killed on the day. We have settled some of the claims, but some of the claims, well, put this way, we sued the government, the ministry, police in particular, on the basis that the dependent of the families, or the families who are dependent or who were dependent on those mine workers who were killed, are entitled to damage, general damages, loss of support, this and the next thing. But there is also a prayer that we're making for an apology. And I think this seems to be something that the government of the day does not see itself able to do. And one wonders why it is difficult for a formal apology to be made. And the clip you have just played, it reminds me that in a public platform, the president of the country committed himself, whether he was going to go with Julius Malema or not, but he committed himself for his own part to visit the widows, because that would have gone a long way to bringing about closure to the widow that I represent. He has not done so. And as we commemorate this day 9 years ago, it has not happened. And we have proceeded with the claims. We have the matter is in court as I speak, but as I say, some of the damages were settled, general damages, and vexing, but we are still insisting on the settlement of the prayers that we made, amongst whom has been apology. And we thought it would have come by now, especially given the kind of commitment that the president made at Winnie Mandela's.
I know that in the legal world, your first course of action often is to talk outside the court between the two sides and agree in principle on certain issues. What has the government side been telling you in terms of an apology? Because that costs nothing. And then finding a proper way to settle this matter. What have they been saying to you?
Well, I would like to, on this platform, divulge the intricacies of how we have sued what is in our pleading, except in general terms. But I can say this, that we have been sent from pillar to post, because it is clear that there is a thinking, I suspect, in those sectors, that if they apologize, then it will be admitting guilt or liability, as it is called in civil courts. But the mere fact that certain heads of damages have been settled, general damages, and I won't disclose the amount, is a clear indication that there is an acceptance. Even if a colloquialism is used in law to say without admission of guilt or for purposes of settlement only, for people who understand what admission is, the mere fact that our state or our government is prepared to part with substantial amounts of money to settle claims by relatives, particularly widows of those mine workers who were killed on that, is a clear indication that no one wants this matter to be a protracted trial of long duration, which may open the wounds that we're seeking to heal. And we thought that government was part of it. And when they started to concede that certain heads of damages can be settled, we were full of hope, except that we are now stuck on a few items, like, for instance, constitutional damage. Is that something that can be awarded by a court of law? And we have been trying to get them to settle that aspect as well. An apology. Does it take anything out of government to apologize public, or to go to these widows and the families of those who were killed to say, we are sorry? The president need not even say, we are admitting guilty or that the police were wrong. All he needs to say to those widows, listen, lives were lost. And those lives happen to be your husband's or your relative or your boyfriend's life that got lost there. They were the lives of the fathers, your children. They were the lives of those on whom you depended. You depended for your livelihood. I acknowledge that, and on behalf of my government,
the Farlam Commission, the Farlam Commission or the Commission of Inquiry into Marikana, it came up with some findings and recommendations. Take us back to that inquiry and assess for us, in terms of the recommendations and the findings, if progress has been made to your satisfaction.
Well, I won't be interviewing with you in the manner in which I'm doing if you can get satisfaction. As I say, we have persuaded the defendant, that is the Minister of Police in particular, without going into a courtroom, that there are certain heads of damage that ought to be paid as and for compensation to the family of those mine workers who were killed on that day. And they have settled. They have paid substantially, and I won't go into the figure, those amounts. But then we have gone further to say, over and above what we have settled or what we have paid by way of general damages, there are still what we would like to think amount to damages which you ought to pay separately from general damages as constitutional damages in a post-apartheid constitutional dispensation where the Constitution guarantees a right to life.
All right.
Now, this is something...
I guess the question really then I'm trying to ask is, nobody seems to have been held to account in terms of responsibility. And is that something that needs to be done even as you have this conversation about compensation?
Well, that is something that really must be done by the National Prosecuting Authority. You must remember that the National Prosecuting Authority is charged with the responsibility of finding whether there were people who were criminally liable. My clients are seeking compensation on the basis of civil liability. But whether there are people who should have been charged, and in my view, there are people who should have been charged, and we have made those recommendations to the National Prosecuting Authorities, in much the same way as we had made recommendations in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission as to who should or should not be charged. But it does appear that the National Prosecuting Authority doesn't have the will, or it is under pressure from those who are in charge. But the National Prosecuting Authority, in terms of the Constitution, is an independent institution. And the blame should be laid at their door if they have not prosecuted crimes, because that's what we call them, that were committed by the police 10 years ago. So if they are persuaded as an independent institution, independent of their political master, then they must proceed and prosecute those whom they consider must answer, whether they were police generals at the time or whether they were people who gave the command that, the mine workers who were already leaving a copy for their homes. They ordered that they should fire the gun. In fact, the evidence that we have relied upon, which we tried to present to Judge Farlam and his co-commissioner, was that the people whom we see apparently charging at the police and being met with a volley of gunshot, fire, were actually being shot from behind, and they were fleeing from being shot from behind. And that is something that the trial would have clarified, in the commission. Shortcomings of a commission is that it does not reach the level of what a trial would do.
Right.
And this is what we've been trying to convince the opponents, in other words, the defendants. This is what we will put on the table, and we will demonstrate if we go to trial. But the trial will be a protracted one. So let us agree on certain facts, in so-called stated case. If we can agree on a stated case as what the facts are, then we'll put it up to the judge to determine whether there's culpability or not. Then you can make your argument. But if you are going to say the police acted in self-defense, you will have to explain, for instance, how a person who is across the river, 60 meters, from where the person was using a firearm, how is that person shot at the back of their head? And you say the police were acting in self-defense. You don't even need to be a lawyer. Only logic will tell you that that person was shot across the river, 60 meters from the person who was holding the gun, was being shot as they were fleeing from the situation. So where does self-defense come?
Or perhaps in wrapping up, viewers might start to question the value then of these commissions of inquiries. You've said that you pointing fingers at the MPA even as far back as the TRC. We've spent billions on the current investigation into state capture. And people are then saying, but this is all taxpayers' money, but nobody seems to be brought to account. Is there value then to these inquiries?
Well, There always is a value in the commissions of inquiry to the extent that they lay bare the facts that ought to be considered by subsequent or consequential, action that must be taken. As I say, in the TRC, it is clear to us. Now it is even clearer because there are people who were in the, in the National Prosecuting Authority who have said, we were ready to prosecute, but there was political interference. The politicians said to us, listen here, don't touch any of these TRC-related cases. That has come out now in affidavits by Vosipikoli, by Ackerman, people who were in the institutions at that time. So even the evidence that we get out of the Zondo Commission, we should look at the trend. Some of the prosecutions that are now being pursued are prosecutions that have come out of evidence that was laid bare in the Zondo Commission, including the incarcerations that have taken place. But there needs to be an exercise of their independence by those organs of state, like, for instance, the National Prosecuting Authority, who are independent in terms of our constitution. Even when the politicians say to them, hey, don't touch these cases because they are sensitive, the NPA should be able to say, thank you very much, Mr. Minister, but, don't interfere with me. I am enjoined by the Constitution to prosecute without fear, favor, or prejudice. And that's what I'm going to do. That we have not found. But one would hope that because of your, interview, me and the other people, they are going to continue now to say we have a constitutionally mandated right and an independence that cause us to prosecute where we ought to without fear, favor, or prejudice. Because Ntsebeza says the Constitution has given us a level of independence that would protect us from executing our jobs. The prosecutors must do what the law and the Constitution says they should do.
Advocate Dumisa Ntsebeza, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much indeed for joining us, and we wish you the best in finally getting some closure for your clients, the victims of the Marikana massacre. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Peter. Thank you very much for having me.
All right, we're going to take a break now, and when we come back, there's a new president in Zambia.